7:28 on KID. Temperatures right around 30 degrees at this hour this morning. Well, our next guest is Stephen Adams. He began his education career as a teacher and administrator for the Ben Franklin Academies, where he co-founded the LDS Education Forum. And Stephen, welcome. It's good to have you along this morning.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You also, I want to mention this, currently an administrator for BYU, Idaho. Tell us about the Education Options Conference that's coming up a week from tomorrow.
You bet. There's a lot of interest right now in different education policies that are out there, and also among people who are looking for options either to homeschool or to find some kind of a public school or private school alternative. And we thought it'd be nice to get those people together and let them listen to some presentations and network and have a good time.
You know, the last year or so, Common Core, the awareness of the core standards has been raised, and I know that there is a lot of concern among parents out there. Have you noticed, has that coincided with the increase in interest for educational alternatives?
It has. I think Common Core is a really good example of kind of a centralizing of education, and you know, kind of a one-size-fits-all, the same goals, the same values for everybody, very counter to diversity and ideas of liberty and individualism. And so that's really leading the parents to kind of see some problems that have crept into the government-run educational systems.
Some of the speakers, well, you're going to speak. The title of your presentation is The History of Education, Colonial Schools to Common Core. Elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, excuse me, that coincides with my PhD research, and I'm looking at kind of what happened to American education. We went from a system that was highly diverse. Even when it began to be government funded, it was still privately delivered. And it was done through mainly religious entities, but also other social groups that wanted to help raise the level of society. And the parents chose which schools they wanted for their children, and it was funded fairly uniformly. And then there began to enter in different, I don't know what the right words are for it, basically religious intolerance issues, where you have the Catholic immigrants kind of getting a foothold in several large cities, and Protestant groups banding together to oppose the education of the Catholic children in Catholic schools. And a lot of people don't understand that that's kind of the historical and political roots of our public education system. When it began to be run by the government, began to be centrally controlled, and began to be uniform. And then you have later on the idea that the Protestant control of those government entities was inappropriate by the courts, and then you have the removing of school prayer and removal of the Bible from the schools and things like that. So I want to go over that history and talk about centralized education versus education that's done decentralized and driven by the needs of the families and the parents. So that's what I'm looking at.
You know, one of the things that I noticed, Steve, is this Common Core debate has unfolded, and how critical the proponents of Common Core say that it is. You look at the emergence of America and the greatness of our nation. We didn't have centrally planned educational curriculum, and look at all of the innovations that America provided and offered to the world without centrally planned education. However, to ask a devil's advocate question here, the world is much different now, and our economy is global. We do have more standardized knowledge, and the things that we experience really are not that different from people in other countries. And so, because of the nature of the world, is there more of a need to take a look at having a standardized set of standards?
No.
Okay.
You probably want me to say more than no. I'm kind of kidding. There really isn't. Now, any educational institution worth their weight is going to find good standards that are meaningful to the students, and they're going to explain that to the parents. And parents are going to seek that for their children. They're going to look for the fruits of a good educational system that they want their children to be associated with. What happens when you centralize it is you actually lose the opportunity to do just that. because you turn the standards conversation into a political debate fueled by the minorities and the majority in the political system fighting with each other, instead of an honest debate about what's best for our children without trying to control or manipulate other people. And it actually fuels that high-quality education much more than a centralized system. A centralized system of education, even if it did work, which it doesn't, would be totally counter to the concept of liberty. And so I think this Common Core discussion is actually, I actually don't really have a lot of strong feelings against Common Core. I think a lot of those standards are very legitimate and reasonable. The problem I have with it is that it's uniform, that it's forced upon everybody, and that it's centrally controlled. And there's a lot of things in education that have those same problems, not just Common Core.
All right, our guest this morning is Stephen Adams. I want to tell you about the Education Options Conference. It's coming up a week from Saturday, so on the 26th, 6 p.m., that's 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m., just